Greetings and welcome to another episode of The School of Life. Today I would like to reason about a plant based diet and the benefits that come with that style of life. I was 17 years old, working as a butcher at the local grocery store. I had access to more meat than you can imagine. I was eating meat for 3 meals of my day and in large quantities. I live in a ranching community. I'm also surrounded by water, so there were bountiful fishermen, and the food that I could get access to, the meats that I could get access to, were plentiful, and I could get the freshest and the nicest stuff possible. And so I actually was living in a really nice way as far as being a meat eater. The meat wasn't being transported from far away. Where I live, the ranching is done fairly humanely. The animals have a huge amount of land to graze on, and the seas around me are open, and the water is really clean and pristine. So eating fish from the area around me in Tamales Bay or out in the Pacific Ocean is the greatest fish that you could ever hope to eat if you were going to do that lifestyle. But at 18 years old, I decided to do an experiment on myself and take a week off of eating meat, because I understood at that time that it took a huge amount of blood going to your stomach to help you to digest the meat that you had ingested, and that maybe I would be able to think faster if I didn't eat meat because some of that blood would go back to my brain. Well, strangely enough, because of my metabolism, I was a runner at the time, I actually did notice within 1 week that I was able to think much more quickly, that I was very sharp and felt a huge energy surge that never ever went away. And I think that was largely because the energy drops that I would feel were because of all my blood going to my stomach to help me to digest the meat that I had consumed. I associated the feeling of full with the heaviness of my stomach whenever I ingested meat. So, as an experiment, after that week of not eating meat, I went to my mom's house where she served me some chicken. Immediately, I felt that heaviness, like a rock in my stomach, and I knew at that point that it was the meat that was making me feel that way and not being full. And it proceeded to last for the next 3 days. So I reasoned with myself, well, maybe it's just the heaviness of chicken. Maybe if I ate something like fish, I would not notice that as much. So about a month later, I went to my mom's house and she served me some fish. And again, I felt that heaviness like a rock in my stomach. And I thought, wow, even with fish, I'm really noticing the difference. And it again took 3 days for that to digest and to pass through before that heaviness lifted and I felt light again. So, as a part of my New Year's resolution, I decided that I would stop eating meat and see how that went. And I never went back to eating meat again. And this is when I was 18 years old. Part of my issue that I was feeling at the time was I had a concern as somebody who was adopted that perhaps there was some obesity in my birth family that I might be dealing with, and I didn't know that for a fact, but I had a sense because I really, really love to eat a huge amount of food all the time. I have like a dedication to eating all the time, which is a crucial thing. We all have to eat as much as we can to survive, and that's a natural instinct for us. But it's really about making the choice to eat the right things. And when you eat the right things, it turns out that you can actually eat just about as much as you want as long as you couple that with a healthy lifestyle that includes vigorous activity, or at least moderate activity, minimally 3 times a week or more. And I'll go further into that a little bit later in this video, but what I really mean is that really having a plant-based diet allows you to eat much more food because plants are very easily assimilated into our bodies, whereas meat and starches are not so easily assimilated into our body. That being said, I would also say that it's important to have a certain amount of starches because starches and proteins last a lot longer than just the plant fibers that you're getting when you're eating a raw vegetable or a raw piece of fruit. I think it's important to have the sugars that come in the raw fruits and raw vegetables, but I also feel like for somebody who does hard labor work, like I have often done for most of my life, eating some proteins, which for me means tofu and nuts and other soy-based products, gluten products, things like that. And then nut butters and a variety of other vegetables that have a high protein content. Those are the kinds of things that help me endure for longer hours during the day so that I'm not constantly having to eat while I'm working. Having some starches is also important too. So I have some pasta some nights if I know that I'm going to have a really long day the next day of work, or I'll have a potato or something like that, something that gives me that feeling of being full without the heaviness of the meat that I used to enjoy before when I was much younger. Now, I have lived for over 31 years as a complete vegetarian. Actually, I'm vegan, doing a plant-based diet, and I don't feel like I'm wasting away. A lot of people are concerned that you become too thin if you're a vegan. Well, I'm not in any way too thin, but I am losing weight, and it's a good thing for me because I feel like I'm a little bit heavier than I would probably like to be in my ideal sense of myself. And I was a vegetarian for many years before I actually became a vegan, and I still was able to put on certain amount of weight because of the dairy products that I was consuming. And I did regularly consume ice cream and cheese and things like that because they were so delicious, of course, and because they made me feel more full than just the plants and the vegetables. But I have learned to do without those things very easily. It's not a big deal to find an ice cream substitute, or I suppose they have cheese substitutes, which I think are dreadful. I don't personally eat any of those things, but I do occasionally have an ice cream substitute just because it's fun. And but I really don't miss having the dairy products. And certainly over the years, I've become more and more aware of the ethical treatment of animals, or the lack thereof, with respect to farming animals. When they raise animals in captivity for food consumption, what you're seeing out in the fields is a happy cow that's living a life that has an open and free roaming lifestyle, whatever, and it has a certain amount of freedom, but it's behind a fence. But what happens inside of the barn with the distribution of antibiotics, the kinds of food, the insemination, and all these other kinds of things that they have to do to maintain their herd of cattle or chickens or whatever it is, those things are actually quite gross. And the more you find out about that, the less that you want to participate in it. So for those people who are for the first time even considering having a plant-based diet, I would suggest that you go and look at some of the videos that are available online. Forks Over Knives is a great video. Food Incorporated is another good video. If you really want to make sure that you change today, I would recommend seeing Earthlings, but it's a very strong movie. So what you're going to see in that movie will be so graphic that you'll have a very difficult time watching it. It was painful for me to watch that video because it's hard to see what they actually do, the treatment of animals that happens, but it is very indicative of what happens in the meat industry. So for you and your education, I would recommend taking a look at some of those movies and some of the other movies that are out there that promote a plant-based diet or switch to getting away from eating meat and dairy products. Now, just for a quick look at what I am eating for myself, I'm going to take you to my kitchen where you can see what it is that I eat personally, what I have available to me to eat in my kitchen. And that won't have anything to do with what's in my garden. It'll just have to do with what's in my kitchen right now. So stand by. So right now we're looking at my fruit bowl, which is fairly empty because I keep a lot of my fruit outside. I have a bag of oranges outside. I have a bag of lemons outside. You can see I have a handy Champion juicer right there and a nice blender. And of course my forever favorite, my coffee grinder. I use that every morning to grind my light roast coffee. And there could probably be a whole video about light roast coffee versus dark roast coffee, but I'll just tell you really briefly that I prefer the light roast coffee because it puts less acid in my stomach and I don't feel bad after I eat it. And of course there's my compost bin. I bring out all my food scraps to my garden because it's all plant-based and it feeds and nourishes my garden. Anyway, I'm going to take a quick look into my refrigerator right now, which is right here, and you will see that I have an abundance of rice milk, which is what I use for my cereal. I have almond milk up here on the top that I'm using for my my coffee because I like to have something in my coffee. and peanut butter. Goddess dressing is my favorite dressing, and an abundance of veggies down here on the bottom, and of course a whole drawer full of nice tofu products, and all of it's vegan. You can see the V right there, that says that it's vegan. So I'm always looking for products that are vegan. I'm looking for things that are healthy. Everything that I eat is organic, and I can afford to do that because in my garden I'm growing most of my own food, and as a result of growing my own food, I'm able to very easily save the money that I need to save to be able to afford the food that I want to eat the rest of the time. Anyway, I hope you found this video interesting and that you consider to make a life change for yourself. I personally feel more energy, more vitalized than ever from eating a plant-based diet, and I never get sick. Since I was 17 years old and I stopped eating meat, I've never been sick since that time. And I largely attribute that to being vegan, eating a plant-based diet, and getting regular exercise. So find something that you love to do as far as exercise. Do it 3 to 5 times a week or more. Mountain biking is my personal favorite, but maybe you like to surf or dance or do something else. Do something with your life. Make sure that you're having some fun to balance out all the work that you do, and try to eat the best food that you can possibly buy, because it'll save you money from having to go to the doctor. So again, I hope you liked this video. I hope you found it informative. If you did, please click like down below or leave a comment. And please feel free to subscribe to my channel. I'm Burton Eubank. I have a channel on YouTube, and your comments and your likes are always enjoyed and welcomed. Bless.